On Being Ill, by Virginia Woolf. On Being Ill was written by Virginia Woolf in 1925 after a nervous breakdown. It first appeared in the Criterion in 1926, then revised and republished as Illness, an Unexploited Mine in Forum. In 1930, Woolf's Hogarth Press printed 250 copies. It was later included in essay collections, but went out of print for decades until rediscovered in 2001 and republished by Paris Press in 2002. Essay. Virginia Woolf, in this passage, reflects on how common and profound illness is, yet how neglected it remains in literature. She begins by describing how illness brings about intense spiritual and emotional transformations, revealing unknown aspects of the self. Even a mild sickness like influenza can uncover deep emotional landscapes, both desolate and beautiful. A slight fever might bring visions, and even something as mundane as toothache might feel like an encounter with death and the divine, as she humorously describes mistaking the dentist's words for a heavenly greeting. Despite these intense experiences, Woolf finds it strange that literature rarely treats illness as a central theme. Unlike love, war, or jealousy, common subjects in novels and poems, illness is mostly ignored or pushed to the background. She notes that only a few writers, like De Quincey and Proust, have touched upon the subject meaningfully. Woolf criticizes literature's traditional focus on the mind, treating the body as invisible or unimportant, as if it were just a clear window for the soul. But she argues that the body constantly influences our experience, it affects our mood, energy, perception, and desires, and it is inescapable. Our lives are shaped by the physical changes we go through, comfort, discomfort, sickness, and eventually, death. Yet, these physical dramas of the body go unrecorded in most writing. Authors continue to emphasize only the workings of the mind, ignoring the body's vital role in shaping human experience. Virginia Woolf continues her argument that literature has ignored the reality of the body and illness. Writers often portray the body as something distant, ignored by philosophers or pushed aside in heroic adventures. Yet, they overlook the personal and silent battles the body fights during sickness, battles that happen alone, in bedrooms, with the mind completely dominated by physical suffering like fever or depression. She explains that the real reason illness is excluded from literature is that it's hard to confront. It would take immense courage and a grounded philosophy to describe pain honestly, otherwise, people either escape into mysticism or transcendental ideas when faced with it. From a more practical view, Woolf says the public would reject a novel about illness, saying it lacks a plot or love. But she argues this is untrue. Illness can feel like love. It causes us to obsess over others, wait anxiously for small signs, like a footstep on stairs, and imagine deep emotional connections, even with people who seem ordinary in health. She also highlights another major problem: language fails to describe pain. English, rich in expressing love and tragedy, has no proper vocabulary for physical suffering. A schoolgirl in love can borrow the words of Shakespeare or Keats, but a person with a headache has no words, and must invent new ones that may sound awkward or even funny. Woolf says we need a whole new kind of language, one that's raw, sensual, even rude, to express bodily pain. And we also need a new set of values in storytelling, where things like high fever or sciatica replace love and jealousy, where the hero might be a calming drug like chloral, imagined as a gentle prince. Virginia Woolf describes how being ill with something like influenza is a profound, transformative experience that others often fail to understand. The sick person sees the world completely differently, ordinary things feel distant, people appear changed, and emotions swing from feeling powerful to utterly helpless. But when he tries to share this experience by simply saying, "I have influenza," others don't grasp the depth of it. Instead, they are reminded of their own past illnesses and want sympathy for themselves. In this passage, Virginia Woolf reflects on how illness strips away the social masks we wear in health. Illness allows for a kind of raw honesty, a childish outspokenness, where truths are revealed that are usually hidden by the polite demands of everyday life. One such truth is about sympathy. We often believe that others truly understand our inner experiences, but in reality, each person is deeply alone in their inner world. True understanding between people is an illusion. In health, we pretend to connect, cooperate, and share. But in illness, that effort fades. We withdraw from the world, no longer playing our part in society's routines. Instead of marching with others, we drift, detached and reflective, perhaps for the first time in a long while, able to truly pause and simply observe things like the sky. Virginia Woolf describes the overwhelming experience of truly seeing the sky while lying still in illness. In daily life, we're too busy or restricted to look at it properly. It's usually just a background to city life or weather predictions. But when bedridden and still, we finally observe the sky in its full, dynamic beauty. It's constantly shifting, clouds moving, light changing, scenes forming and dissolving, like an immense, powerful, and tireless performance that no one watches. At first, Woolf feels that this neglected beauty should be acknowledged, maybe even reported or used. But as she watches longer, that feeling fades, replaced by the realization that while the sky is breathtaking, it is also indifferent, beautiful, yet cold and unconcerned with human life. Woolf reflects on how nature, especially the sky and flowers, exists entirely apart from human needs or emotions. The sky uses vast energy to put on its constant show of changing colors and clouds, regardless of whether anyone watches. Even if all humans disappeared, it would go on unchanged. Seeking comfort, she turns to something smaller and more familiar, the rose. Unlike people, the rose stands calmly and with dignity, quietly enduring the day. Other flowers too, gladioli, dahlias, lilies, even the proud sunflower, exist in serene self-possession. Despite their stillness and indifference, humans have made them symbols of beauty, passion, ritual, and even grief. Their comfort lies in their indifference. They do not reflect our emotions, and that very lack of concern is soothing. Like great artists such as Milton and Pope, who offer consolation not by thinking about us, but by transcending us, flowers and nature give peace not through sympathy, but through serene detachment. Despite the sky's indifference and the flower's calm detachment, everyday life goes on with tireless energy. People go about their routines, catching trains, fixing cars, herding cows, repairing roofs, just like ants or bees in a busy colony. Life continues with determination and rhythm. But those who are ill and lying still, the recumbent, see a deeper truth that active people often miss. Nature, though seemingly passive, will ultimately win. In the end, life will slow, heat will fade, frost will cover the earth, and even the sun will die out. Nature, unstoppable and unconcerned, has the final say. Even when the world is cold and lifeless, signs of past beauty and life, like flowers in an ancient garden, will still appear. Life persists, and even as death approaches, people cling to hope, imagining heaven and immortality. Given how long humanity has wished for an afterlife, surely some clear vision of it should exist. But when one looks to religion, like reading a bishop's sermon or watching churchgoers, the belief seems tired, vague, and uninspired. People don't appear truly convinced or transformed by their faith. Heaven, if it is to be meaningfully imagined, needs more than rituals or tired sermons. It needs creativity and poetic vision. Left on our own, we tend to imagine heaven in trivial or earthly ways. Only poets have the power to truly envision heaven, so perhaps the job of imagining it should belong to them, especially the poet laureate. When we are ill, we lack the energy and focus needed to read long, complex prose works like The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire or Madame Bovary. Instead, we turn to poetry, which suits our altered state of mind. Illness releases us from the need for reason and criticism, allowing us to appreciate fragments of verse or poetic prose in a deeper, more instinctive way. Lines of poetry, phrases, or even sounds take on a magical, emotional power. We sense their rhythm, color, and mystery beyond their literal meaning. Illness makes us more open to incomprehensibility, which holds a special charm when our usual intellectual clarity is dimmed. When we're ill, Our usual mental guards, like logic and discipline, are relaxed, allowing us to engage more intimately with difficult or obscure poetry. Lines from poets like Mallarmé or Donne, or even phrases in Latin or Greek, seem to come alive. Their sounds, rhythms, and imagery affect us deeply, like flickering light through leaves. And if we eventually understand their meaning, it's all the more rewarding because the journey was slow and rich with sensory beauty. In this way, we resemble foreigners who don't fully know the language but can still feel the music of the words, perhaps even more deeply than native speakers. Illness gives us a kind of boldness, a rashness, that helps us read Shakespeare more freely. In health, we're often intimidated by his towering reputation and the mountain of critical commentary, which dulls our personal response. But when we're ill, detached from social expectations and scholarly pressure, we feel as if it's just Shakespeare and us. We read with fresh eyes and unfiltered emotion, unbothered by what others have said. Illness clears away the noise, allowing his works, especially Lear and Macbeth, to strike us directly and powerfully. However, Hamlet is different. It resonates most during youth, when we feel most like Hamlet himself, uncertain, introspective, searching. We don't analyze Hamlet so much as experience it. Later in life, we can only look back at it as we would our younger selves, never quite grasping it again. It remains shifting and elusive, like a reflection in glass, always meaningful, but never fixed. Though some may criticize sudden shifts in taste during illness, from Shakespeare to lesser-known writers like Augustus Hare, such transitions feel natural when we're unwell. In that state, even second-rate literature can offer great comfort, while mediocrity remains intolerable. Hare's The Story of Two Noble Lives, though initially slow and bogged down with relatives, eventually charms the reader. We become immersed in the eccentric lives of aristocrats who flee balls for Iceland or build extravagant castles. The focus isn't on individual characters but on the life of the family as a whole, a rich, tangled web of aunts, grandmothers, and daughters like Charlotte and Louisa, who marry, travel, and drift through life sketching and socializing. The appeal lies in the atmosphere, the oddities, and the gentle, almost comical rhythms of upper-class life. Life in the early 19th century, as reflected in the letters and experiences of women like Louisa, was slow, detailed, and filled with both public events and private sorrows. Letters traveled across oceans, news took time, and emotions were often hidden. Louisa, living in Ireland while her husband Lord Waterford hunted, endured loneliness with quiet strength. She cared for the poor, expressed deep faith, and devoted herself to art, filling notebooks, designing frescoes, and painting even at night. Though praised by great artists, she humbly called herself just a sketcher. Her life was full of duties, managing a crumbling house, doing charity, and waiting for her husband's return. She often sketched him late at night, knowing each time it might be the last. One day, the horse stumbled, and he died. Louisa sensed it before hearing the news. Her silent grief was unforgettable. The image of her standing by the window at his funeral, gripping the curtain in anguish, left a lasting impression on all who saw her.